Open your science textbooks and come on page 38. Today, inshallah, we will discuss page 38 and 39. So are you there, students?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Dear students, today my topic of discussion is alkali, metal, halogens, and noble gases. And inshallah, at the end of this lecture, you will be able to understand the different types of elements in the periodic table. Also, you will be able to discuss the properties of alkalis, metals, halogens, and noble gases. Dear students, before starting our today's lecture, let's review our previous lecture. Previously, we were talking about the periodic table, and these are the key points of the periodic table we discussed in our previous lecture, that is yesterday. The first thing is the periodic table. There are over 100 different elements, each with different properties. We all know that different elements have different properties. Okay. So you have to put them in a specific table, and that is what's called the periodic table. So the periodic table displays all the elements in the order of their atomic number. Or in other words, we can say that periodic table is Beta, you have to check your connection. I think your connection is weak. Okay, so the elements are arranged here in the periodic table according to their atomic numbers. Then the table has several rows, that is also called periods, arranged on top of each other. As a result, elements with similar properties are arranged in the vertical columns called groups. Okay, then periodic table is a combination of rows and columns. So the horizontal lines, that is what's called periods, and the vertical lines were so called groups. The next thing we discussed in our previous lecture is the zigzag line at the right hand side of the periodic table divides the metals and non-metals. And notice that hydrogen is outside of the periodic table. Why it is outside from the table? Because it does not fit to any of the particular group. Okay, that's why it is located there in isolation. This is a periodic table. You can clearly see here. Different groups are there. This is the first group. Okay, that is what's called what? Alkali metals. Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth. Now, today we will discuss these groups in very detail. So let's discuss more about the periodic table. Who will read this passage? Yes.
So may I read?
Ali Zishan Work will read this passage.
Yes, sir. The number of electrons in the outer shell of its atoms has a big effect on the way an element reacts. That is why elements in the same group of the periodic table tend to react in the same way as each other. A full outer shell of 8 electrons is very stable arrangements. Elements with full outer shells are very unreactive because the electrons tend to stay where they are. However, elements with one electron or with one space in their outer shells are very reactive.
Okay, so the number of electrons in the outer shells of the atoms has a big effect on the way of the elements react. If you remember, dear students, I told you in our previous lecture that the outermost shells electrons are very, very important because those electrons are contributing their efforts for the bonding with different metals or different elements. Okay, so the outermost shell electrons are very important. If the number of electrons in the outermost shells are 1, 2, then they will be considered to be very highly reactive to those who have deficiency of 1 or 2 electrons. Okay, so those elements comes close together, and as a result they were reacting chemically with each other, or a chemical reaction is occur between such elements, and as a result what happens, a chemical bond will form between the two elements, and a chemical element will form after that. Okay, so this is a periodic table. You can clearly see here. This is also called the first group. So they have only one electron in their outermost shell. The second group, they have two electrons in their outermost shell. The third group have three electrons in their outermost shell. The fourth group have four electrons, five electrons, six, seven, and eight electrons respectively in their outermost shell. So the elements that have only one electrons or two electrons in their outermost shell, they are considered to be the highly reactive elements. Okay, and the elements from group 6 and 7 are also considered to be highly reactive because they have a deficiency of only one or two electrons. The group 7 needs one electron. Okay, and they will easily bond with the group 1. So this group elements were happy to make a bond with the 7th group, and group 2 elements were happy to make a group with group 6. Okay, this one. So they were easily make a chemical bond between each other, and as a result a new chemical material will or alloy will form after that. Now come towards the unreactive and reactive elements. As I told you earlier, that those elements are considered to be reactive elements whose outermost shells are not completed. May be they have only one or two electrons, or they have deficiency of one or two electrons, so they are considered to be a highly reactive elements. But in periodic table, we can say that some elements are also there that their outermost shells are almost completed. Okay, their outermost shells are considered to be completed, and such elements are considered to be, yes, those elements are from belongs to group 8 because their outermost shells are so called completed shells, and they are not being able to react with any other elements because they don't need to react with other elements. Their outermost shells are completed, and that's why they were so called noble gases. So come towards the reactive and unreactive elements. Neon is in periodic table in group 8. Okay, it is belongs to group 8, and it is what so called the unreactive, what they were so called the unreactive element. Why it is so called unreactive? Because they have complete number of electrons in their outermost shell. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So 8 electrons are there in their outermost shell, and that is why it is so called unreactive. Because they are not being able to lose any of the electron, or they are not being able to add any, or catch any of the electrons. So that is why it is so called unreactive. Look at here, potassium and chlorine. So potassium have only one electron in their outermost shell, and it is belongs to group 1. Okay, it is belongs to group 1. And chlorine is belongs to group 7. It is belongs to group 7. So the potassium atom have only one electron in their outermost shell, and the chlorine have 7 electrons in their outermost shell. They need only one electron to complete its outermost shell, and they have to lose one electron easily to complete their outermost shell, because if they gain 7 electrons, things will be quite harder for potassium. So potassium will prefer to lose one electron, and this one electron will move from this atom to here in this atom, and it will be accommodated there, and a bond between the potassium and chlorine will form, and as a result, a chemical compound potassium chlorine chloride will form after such a reaction. These things were quite clear to you all, beta?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
कोई problem हो तो पूछे बेटा.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Explained? कोई problem तो नहीं है ना?
No, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now come towards another example of unreactive and reactive elements. Look at here. This is iodine atom. Okay, this is iodine atom. Its outermost shell have 7 electrons. Look at this. This is the 7 number. So its electronic configuration is 2, 8, 18, 18, and 7. Okay. Now come towards the potassium. Its electronic configuration is 2, 8, 8, and 1. It have only 1 electron in its outermost shell, and it have 7 electrons in its outermost shell. Now, what happens if the iodine and potassium were joined together? Then they will form a chemical compound, and that is what's called potassium iodide. Okay, because
will give his one electron to
very good, very nice. Yes, the potassium will give its 1 electron to the iodine atom, and that will be added to the iodine. So the iodine outermost shell is completed, and there will be no electron in the outermost shell of potassium. So that outermost shell will be demolished there, and the potassium will comes to stable form. Now come towards the neon. Neon is belongs to group 8, and they have 8 electrons in their outermost shells. Their outermost shell is completed, and they don't need to add any other electron or charged particle. So they are so-called unreactive. Okay, so things were quite clear to you all that what are the reactive and unreactive elements.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Very nice. Okay, now let's
Yes.
discuss the alkali metals, halogens, and noble gases. Come towards the alkali metals. What are the alkali metals? The elements that belongs to the first group. Okay, the elements that belongs to the first group. They were so called alkali metals. They were so called alkali metals. And what are the elements that belongs to the first group? Yes, who will name them? Come on. Ji beta. Who will name them?
Sir, can you repeat the question?
My question is, what are the names of the elements of the first group?
Sir,
Yes.
lithium,
Yes, lithium,
sodium,
sodium,
potassium,
potassium, yes,
rubidium,
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 yes,
and calcium,
cesium,
and
cesium, and francium. Okay.
francium.
Let me repeat all the names of the elements: lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, and francium. All these are the 7 elements, 6 elements that belongs to group 1, and they were so called alkali metals. Now, if somebody asks from you that what do you know about the alkali metals, so you will say that all the elements that belongs to group 1, that is what so called alkali metals. Okay, why it is so called alkali metals? Because they contains only 1 electron in their outermost shell. Okay, so the elements in group 1 are sometimes called the alkali metals. These are reactive because they have 1 electron in their outer shell. Alkali metals such as sodium are soft, and they can be cut with the help of a knife, and they react violently with water. What does it mean? They behave, or they are reacting violently with water. What does it mean? Anybody of you who will tell me about this? Give it up. Anybody of you who will tell me about this? Nobody?
Sir, they react with violently with water.
Yes, they react widely with water, and they
Like
are
if you drop it or put it in water, it will react very fast.
very fastly. Yes, where a fast reaction will occur there. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So sodium react with water, and they will form sodium hydroxide. Okay, and that is what's so called an alkali. Okay. We will discuss acids and alkalis later on in our upcoming lecture, in our upcoming chapters in very detail. Okay, so this is all about the alkali metals. This picture will tells you about the alkali metals in very detail. Look at here. The first element in the first group is lithium. The electronic configuration of lithium is 2 and 1. 2 and 1 means 2 in the first shell, 2 electrons are there in first shell, and 1 in second shell. Okay. Sodium have 2 electrons in the first shell, 8 electrons in the second shells, and 1 electrons in the third shell. Potassium have 2 electrons in the first shell, 8 electrons in the second shell, 8 electrons in the third shell, and 1 electron in the fourth shell. Rubidium have 2 electrons in the first shell, second shell 8 electrons, third shell 8 electrons, fourth shell 18 electrons, and fifth shell 1 electron. Cesium have 2 in the first, 8 in the second, 8 in the third, 18 in the fourth, 18 in the fifth, and 1 in the last one. And similarly, Prancium have 2 in the first, 8 in the second, 8 in the second, 18 in the fourth, 18 in the fifth, 32 in the sixth, and 1 in the
Why are
seventh.
you so rude to me?
Okay,
नहीं काके रो के थकते नहीं है
well, please keep silence. Please don't make a disturbance, please. Okay, so you can clearly see here that in all these elements, the last term is 1.
Sir, I was also noting this, that all the last shells are one.
Exactly, that's the point to be noted. Yes, very good. Okay, so all the elements have 1 electron in their outermost shell, and that's the identity of such elements to be put there in group 1. Okay, all the elements in group 1 are those elements who have only 1 electron in their outermost shell. Forget about that how many electrons they have. Okay, but you have to see the electronic configuration, and you have to see the last shell of that element, and that contains 1 electron, and that's why that is what's so called the group 1 elements, and group 1 elements names are so called alkali metals.
Sir, how will pronounce the second last one?
Which one?
Second last, the
Halogens, this one, second last 7,
the alkali.
the last element of the alkalis, this one,
Sir, the second last, how will pronounce this?
this one you are talking about, this element,
Yes, sir.
cesium.
Cesium.
Let
And
me
sir, last one.
let me repeat all of them again. Lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, and francium. Okay, francium. The last one is so called francium. Okay, the last
Okay,
one is
sir.
so called francium. Okay, now come towards the next thing, and that is what's so called halogens. Okay, the second last group of the periodic table, group 7, they were so called halogens. Okay, they were so called halogens. So group 7 in the periodic table contains the halogens. These are reactive elements, are very reactive, just like group 1 are highly reactive. Group 7s are also highly reactive. Why they are highly reactive? Because they have 7 electrons in their outermost shell, and they need 1 electron desperately. Okay, so they can snatch 1 electron from the elements of group 1, and they will complete their outermost shell. So that's why they were so called highly reactive. These are the reactive elements because their atoms have 1 empty space in their outer shell. Halogens are colored gases and very poisonous. Okay, this is the property or characteristic of such elements. Okay, are halogens. Okay, so halogens are colored gases and they are very poisonous. Anybody of you who knows about the poisonous means? Yes. Anybody of you who knows about the poisonous? Yes. What is mean? Zehrili. Yes. Very good. Very nice. Okay. Now, come towards the uses of the halogens. So chlorine is used to purify water in the swimming pool, etc., as it kills the bacteria. Okay, you have to add chlorine in water tanks. You have to add chlorine in aquariums. You have to add chlorine in swimming pools. What is the function or what is the purpose of the chlorine is there? Because chlorine is helpful for killing the bacteria. The harmful bacteria present in water, they have to kill those bacteria, and it is used for the purification of water. Chlorine is also used as a bleach. Okay, if there is a stain on your clothes or in some places you have to remove them with the help of a bleach. So chlorine is also used as a bleach. Iodine is another element and that belongs to group 7. It is used as an antiseptic on cuts. Okay, if you have to, if there is a cut on your skin, what happens, you have to put iodine over there. Okay, and that iodine will protect that cut or that wound from the germs. Okay, it will not allow the germs to enter that cut. Okay, so it is used as antiseptic. Antiseptic means it will protect your skin from germs. Okay, so halogens are colored poisonous gases and they are very, very reactive. Now come towards the next group of the periodic table and they were so-called noble gases. Group 8 were so-called the noble gases. Okay, group 8, the elements of group 8 were so-called noble gases. And the elements that belongs to the noble gases, that is what so-called helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, radon, and the last one is that word is not comes in my mind. Okay, so these are the elements that belongs to the group 8. Okay, now come towards the noble gases and their properties. Perhaps the most famous group in the periodic table is the group 8, and that is also called group 0. Why it is called group 0? Because they have no reaction. As I told you earlier that the noble gases are such elements that their outermost shells are completed. The first helium have 2 electrons in their outermost shell and it completes the first shell because the first shell occupies 2 electrons. Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, they contains 8 electrons and all of them contains 8 electrons in their outermost shell. So if a question is asked from you in the paper that why the group 8 were so-called group 0, so you have the answer that because they are unreactive or mostly they are unable to react with the other substances. That's why it is so-called group 0 or noble gases. Why it is so-called noble gases? Noble gases means they are unreactive. Okay, they are harmless. They were not been able to make any of the bond with other elements. So that's why they were so-called noble gases, because all the elements that belongs to group 8 are usually gases. In the form of gases, they were exist. They are famous because they do not react. As I told you earlier that they are not being able to react with other elements. So that's why it is so-called noble gases. This is because their outer electronic shells are completely full. Okay. Helium is used to fill balloons because it is lighter than air. Helium-filled balloons float upwards and they are also safe to use. Now come towards the test yourself on page 39. Are you there, students, beta?
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Okay. Come on page 39 of your textbook. Yes, come on. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
Okay. So
Yes,
on
sir.
top of the page, you can clearly see that test yourself is there. Okay. The first question is write down the group numbers for carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur. So they were talking about, I have to highlight those elements in the periodic table first for you. You can clearly see that is also called carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and sulfur. They were talking about such elements. So who will tell me about from which group carbon is belongs? Yes, come on, hurry up.
Sir, carbon is from group 4.
Very nice. Carbon is from group 4. Nitrogen is from?
Group
From
5.
5.
Very nice. Oxygen is from?
Group
Group
6.
6.
And
And
sulfur
sulfur
is
is also from.
okay.
From 6.
So you have to write them. Carbon belongs to group 4, oxygen belongs to group 6, nitrogen belongs to group 5, and sulfur belongs to group 6 also. Please do write them. Yes.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Sir, yeah.
Come towards the next question of this test yourself. Where in the periodic table do you find the precious metals gold, silver, and platinum? Yes. So you have to come to the metallic group. Okay, these are so called metals. This is what so called silver, gold, and the next one is, yes, platinum. Okay, that is also called platinum. Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
all of them are belongs to in between group 2 and group 3.
Okay,
Okay, these metals lies between group 2 and group 3. Please do write them.
Sir, you will send this slide in a group or not?
Yes, I will share this PPT. Those who want to write the answer of this question, they can please.
I have taken screenshot.
Sir, I done.
You have to write it on copy.
Yes, you have to
Yes.
write them in your copy. Yes, exactly. You have to
आप
write them in
सेंड
your.
कर दे क्यों मैं अभी स्क्रीनशॉट नहीं अभी सेंड कर सकते इसलिए
I will send this whole PPT in your WhatsApp group. Don't worry about that.
ओके सर
Okay, now come towards the next question. Write down the names of the elements having these symbols PB, SN, W, K, P, and G. Yes, who will tell me about PB? Yes. Nobody? PB, it stands for lead, SN stands for tin, W stands for tungsten, K is for potassium,
A stands for potassium.
P for phosphorus, Hg is for mercury. Please do write these.
Sir, done.
Can I move to the next question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many electrons do these elements have in their outer shell? Nitrogen, chlorine, and calcium. So nitrogen have how many? Yes.
5
Nitrogen have 5 electrons in its outermost shell. Chlorine have
chlorine
7.
7
7. And calcium have
2.
2 electrons. Very good. Very nice. So nitrogen have 5, chlorine have 7, and calcium have 2 electrons in their outermost shell.
Sir, done.
done
We have to wait for all the students to do this. Okay. The second question is explain how you got your answer. So by checking in which group these elements are. Okay, this is the answer of the next part of this question. Come towards the last question of this test yourself. What do the elements in these groups have in common? Alkali metals, halogens, and noble gases. So this is the answer of that question. Alkali metals, they belongs to group 1 and 1 electron in their outer shell. They are metals which are soft and react violently with water. Halogens, they are belongs to group 7 and they are reactive elements because their atom have only one empty space in their shell. Halogens are colored gases and poisonous. And noble gases, they belongs to the group 8, which is called group 0. They are non-reactive because their outer shells is completely filled. Okay, so this is the answer of that question.